What's happening, guys, and welcome back to another Sunday Scan. We are going to go over everything that you need to know about the markets for the upcoming week in today's scan. We're going to cover moves in cannabis, some possible legislation there. We're going to go over the action that we've seen in Oracle and some of the AI names, and we're going to go over a bunch more. So make sure that you stick it out to the end, and you're going to get a lot of great information, especially around some commodities like silver and some trades that we had recently there. So if you're joining us for the first time, we are Investors Underground, and every single week we do a Sunday scan to get you prepared and caught up on the prior week and into the following week to make sure that you have some good trades, possibly lined up. We focus on the most in-play tickers, the most in-play themes, and it's a huge value add to active traders to be able to get caught up on that. So instead of having to do 10 hours of your own research, we consolidate everything down into about 30 minutes here. So let's get into a few things. I will give the disclaimer that I'm not a financial advisor, and these are not buy or sell recommendations. Everything I'm going to talk about today is for educational and informational purposes only. Before we get into scan, Traders for a Cause tickets, make sure that you are still browsing the site for Traders for a Cause and picking up your tickets for Miami into early 2026. So we will link that in the description below. So let's get into some charts and go over what has been moving in the market this week. So one of the big things that we've seen, we had a pretty eventful week, and one of the main takeaways is that you had a lot of tech weakness and a lot of small cap strength. So over the past week, we had the Fed meeting, and they were talking about, being a little bit more dovish. And that just means that having some policies in place that are a little bit better and easier for most, stock market stocks. So what does that mean is that some of the money from the old winners, like the AI names and everything like that, money is starting to flow out of there and into some other themes like small caps, which when interest rates go down, small caps tend to be very highly correlated with going up over cycles like that. So some money flowing out of tech and flowing into IWM or small caps was a big theme of the last week. And, the money flowing out of tech, a big name that was moving over the past week was Oracle. And you had earnings there, and you also had some talks of delays with their OpenAI partnership. So basically, to catch you up on everything that's been going on with the AI trade recently is that the market's been calling out some of the BS that's been going around with, all these companies have these incredibly high dollar amount commitments for AI and for investment in the US. And I think the market's finally starting to say that, a lot of this probably won't actually come to fruition. So OpenAI has, commitments for hundreds of billions of dollars to all these companies, and Oracle is one of those companies. And so anytime there's a headline around a delay, or anytime that there's a headline around something not going perfectly, the market just gets a little bit more and more conservative with how it is deploying its own capital. So that being said, Oracle was a big mover over the last week, and that impacted a ton of names. You even had other names like Avago or AVGO. These were a couple of the other names that really sold off hard. And then you also had that spill into things like NVIDIA. So basically the AI trade, the tech trade started to come in a good amount. And then you have the knock-on effects from that, like the AI power trades. Those are all unwinding as well. So even solid names like BE, they are caught up in the sector. So something that I've learned over my career, over trading for 10 years or so, is that even when you think that a company has a good thing going for it, group strength is really paramount, and that is a huge factor in success in trading. It's recognizing what is the stock that you're watching, what group are they a part of, and that's something that Ariel talks about a lot, because the group as a whole determines a lot of the move that the individual stocks have. So if you have some pressure in tech, if you have some pressure in the AI trade, you can have that spill over into things like Oklo, into things like BE. So regardless of how well the individual names are doing versus the other ones, if the sector as a whole is coming in, you have to be aware of that. And so even though this has been trending, most of the year, we've had some recent volatility, and this could be forming what we call like a head and shoulders pattern around here, where you have a shoulder, a head, a shoulder. And that just means that sometimes after a trade or after a theme has been in play for a long period of time, if it's struggling to break out to new highs and you have a lot of buyers and longs in here, it is more vulnerable to some downside flushes. So keep an eye on that. If we continue to see some money flowing out of the AI trade in the AI sector, then the power names could be vulnerable for that. So that's just kind of some market context there. We also had some more volatility in crypto land. Again, I keep saying that I think that the problem with Bitcoin right now is MSTR. The problem with Ethereum is BMNR. So these treasury companies, these companies that were a huge part of the demand on the way up, once the cycle changes and peaks out a little bit, and you have some compression in the net asset value of those companies, they don't have the same ability to buy the same way that they were. So if they were one of the major buyers of crypto over the last 12 months, now that cycle has changed. Now they are not able to buy nearly as much. And so you have a huge part of the demand from crypto basically stuck, or it's in limbo right now, just kind of going sideways. So that was another thing that was majorly in play. And then some other recent runners like SNDK, you can see that is also a real trend change now from, this being a market darling over the last couple of months to that big mean reversion trade, and now just kind of consolidating here. And if you have some money flowing out of tech, flowing out of the AI names, then that could be something to keep an eye on, definitely. So a big thing that will be on watch for the upcoming week is the weed sector. So we'll get into the main watches in a few minutes, but really the whole thing with the cannabis sector, I think, is a polls play. So what do I mean by that? I think politically, Trump is going to be looking for some things that could potentially boost his poll numbers, especially as we head into 2026, as we head into some midterm things. So I think that you're going to see a lot of sector trades that could potentially be politically tied. And one of the low-hanging fruit, things there could potentially be cannabis. So, cannabis names have been in play, out of play for the last couple of years. Nothing has really materialized, but you have these, headlines where you get everyone gets super excited. Maybe you have some policy changes, and usually, if nothing happens, then they fade right back down. But if the policy actually changes, then you could have some really nice trends emerge. So let's dig in a little bit into some of the main watches, and I'll get going with Tilray. So basically, Tilray had a huge amount of volume come in as there were some headlines in the weed space. So basically the headlines were that Trump could potentially, change the classification of cannabis from, a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3, just making it, less of a big deal than it currently is. And if so, then that could impact things like how the cannabis companies can bank and how they can be, interact in capital markets and everything like that. So it could be a potential big thing for the cannabis companies, especially as they can do things across states, because if there's still a problem federally, then that hinders a lot of the activity that the cannabis companies can do. So the main ones that really move are usually Tilray and CGC. And so what we're going to be watching for is that there could be headlines as soon as Monday, or some regulation changes as soon as Monday. That's what kind of the rumors have been saying. So I think Monday we probably gap up pretty hard into that. And then it's really going to be about, does any news actually materialize? If it's just rumors, if the Trump's team or if the White House says that we're not actually considering doing anything, then I think that these will have a total round trip back to where they came from. I'll get a more granular view here, but you can see on the hourly, big volume, big move up from that $8 area, or that $8.60 or so, all the way up to 14. Around that in after hours. So that will be a big one, potentially a big opportunity. If the news is confirmed, and if there actually is a big regulation change, then this could be the start of a new sector run, similar to like robotics or to some of the EV names. So that's kind of how a sector run happens. And so someone had a comment last week asking about like, what are the best kind of market environments for breakouts to work. And really what I think that this is a good example of when you have a generally strong small cap market. And so, measuring that with IWM. So if the Fed's being a little bit dovish and small caps are trading fairly well, IWM is kind of like the group or the index to track that. And so if you have a generally bullish environment, and you have some kind of new sector news that could be potentially bullish for a sector, so something like cannabis, then that is the environment where breakouts tend to really work. So good market for small caps, good headlines, and then potentially industry changing news in a stock that's been pretty neglected. And that just means that it's already been selling off. So there's not a whole lot of bag holders still in here because they've had the chance to sell out over the last couple of months. or so. And so after a stock has been neglected and you have a piece of positive news in the right environment, those are some really good breakout trades. And what you tend to do is wait for those headlines. And I think Investors Underground got one of the first headlines out there that this was actually a thing with the cannabis sector. And so what people could do is basically take a long position and then risk against the recent base. And so that just means that if the price was around here before the news, and if it's positive news, then you can usually get in and risk around that equilibrium area, assuming that if the news turned out to be nothing, it would just basically fall back to that area now. So that's a good way to participate in the in a long trade on some potentially game-changing news like that. So Tilray will be on watch into Monday. And again, it's all about what happens next. You have the rumors. Are the rumors confirmed? And if they are, then you could have a whole sector trade start to, manifest there. And if the rumor is denied, then you could have a massive trade on the backside. And Tilray and CGC both have options traded on them too. So whether someone wants to short them straight up with equity, or if they want to get puts on them, those are both very strong ways that you could potentially have a nice trade on this if the rumors are denied. So definitely keeping both of those on watch into the week ahead. You could see CGC coming up to a nice base around here. Again, if that news is confirmed, then you could have a flat base breakout, kind of like a swing trade going on with a sector trade there too. Another theme that we've really seen has been the, kind of the robotics. And Tesla has been one of the strongest names to really focus on for that theme. Yes, you have some other names like SERV and RR and a couple of others, but the small cap names tend to spike and then retrace a lot, where some of the larger cap names tend to have multiple things going for them. And as long as you have something that correlates strongly with them, so like when speculation is high, when small caps are actually doing well, that tends to be a more bullish environment for Tesla, especially if people are anticipating rates coming down. So that is another factor. So you have the theme, you have the right environment for it, you have some interest rates, coming down, and then you have a nice technical setup here. So let's pull up the weekly, kind of a big picture view. You can see that this is building super nicely up towards some of these prior highs. And like I said last week, I think that at some point in 2026, and maybe it'll get going a little bit sooner than that, but I think we're going to have a massive breakout, almost similar to what we saw in Palantir over the last 2 years or so. So we'll see what happens, but this will definitely be on watch as this comes up to those major levels. And if we start to get, some contraction here, and you can, get a nice long position. And then if you get expansion and it starts to really break out, that is one to watch. Silver. So we had some nice trades on a mean reversion set up on Thursday and Friday. So I actually did 2 videos in Investors Underground, 2 live trading videos where I kind of walked through my whole thought process. I started it on Thursday and kind of went through why I was looking for a mean reversion trade. And it was based on factors like the amount of extension. We were after the Fed meeting, basically had all the good news factored in. And, you also had a big options expiration date coming up on that Friday. And so all those things ended up coming together pretty well. I had puts on SLV and they ended up doing very nicely. Some were up, 200% or so. So nice win there. Definitely didn't maximize the trade. I think if I started the trade more on Friday rather than on Thursday, I know that I would have had a much, much better, outcome and reward to risk, but it still was a nice trade. And you can see kind of the thought process going to that. So if you're a member of Investors Underground, I encourage you to check out those 2 live trading videos, because I'm walking through everything as it's happening. And you can really see the thought process of, okay, why is this on watch? How do I want to enter this? What are the signals that I'm looking for? And then, getting into the nitty gritty of, okay, I'm looking for these technical signals. I'm looking for this kind of action with the candles and everything like that. And you can really just see it play out in real time. So definitely check out those 2 videos. There's a part 1 and a part 2 of the live trading there. So another name on watch is this LITE. So this reminds me a lot of SNDK. We talked about this, how when this was a market darling, super nice trend up there, and then big, ugly mean reversion, and then some trend consolidation. I think we could potentially be entering a similar phase with LITE, especially if this is related to the AI trade, and the AI trade is getting some money coming out of it. So that's definitely one to pay attention to. Another one that will be on watch is this CVNA. So we talked about how after this name got announced that it was going to be added to the S&P 500 index, this reminded me a lot of the stock APP after that got added. So what I was expecting is kind of, an ad, and then for it to trend up kind of closer to that date where it's officially kind of added and gets its weighting in the index and go. And so that can just be a huge amount of demand that gets poured into a stock like this. So you can see, this big move up here. This reminds me a lot of what happened with APP, around here when that got added to the index. So eventually I'm looking for a massive mean reversion trade. I think we might be somewhere around here on CVNA. So this move on APP should look pretty familiar around here. So I think that might be where we are in the cycle because it still doesn't get finalized until December 22nd. And so after that, I will be looking for a big mean reversion trade on CVNA, similar to how this played out in APP. So definitely keep an eye on that. We might need one kind of a little mean reversion here and then a big squeeze out or a capitulation. And once we have that in CVNA, then it could be ripe for a big mean reversion. A couple other names that are in play is you had SpaceX talking about, which is one of Elon's companies, talking about doing an IPO in sometime in 2026, potentially at a $1.5 trillion valuation. So that ignited all the space-related stocks. So you have things like SATS, ASTS, RKLB. So all these have been trending with that. So what I'm looking to see is for when these stop moving up, these are still trending pretty well for right now, and especially SATS, because there could be some acquisition or some deals there. But some of the other names like RKLB and ASTS, after these start to kind of peak out and struggle, I'm looking for some mean reversion trades there. But this has definitely been a theme that has been in place. So just another thing to kind of keep on watch. And I think we touched on most of the things that I want to cover in Scan. There's going to be a couple of other things that I will bring up that I think could be helpful to some people's trading. And that is, as we enter 2026, to really think about what are the changes that you want to make to your trading that could really, improve it. And so if you were to look at your trading as a business and, all the different aspects that can really move the needle on that, one is you need a style. You need to have a style of trading that resonates with you and a style of trading that has edge. So I often say that a lot of trading falls into a couple of categories. It can either be some kind of like trending strategy where you're following trends or participating in trends as they're working, or it can be some kind of reversion strategy where after a trend has been in play and it's speeding up, finally, it mean reverts back to a more normal baseline after a huge run up. So, focusing, are you more of a trend trader? Are you more of a reversionist trader? Or are you a combination of both? And then once you have that figured out, focus on, what kind of market caps and what kind of stocks do you like to focus on? Are you more of a small cap focused trader? Are you more of a large cap focused trader? Do you like focusing on options? There's so many different ways to kind of think about it. And then also, what time frame? Do you like to do things more of on a swing trading time frame, daily charts, big picture moves, big moves like that? Or do you like intraday moves, especially with things like small caps where you have, a whole cycle play out in 1 or 2 days as opposed to over several weeks or several months? So, really focus on what kind of trading strategy you want to focus on, what kind of market caps you want to focus on, and then what time frame you want to focus on, and then making sure that you're actually doing a strategy that has edge. And that just means that you're able to frame your trades with risk, reward, and probability. And so every trade that you want to make, you want to be able to control your risk and have small, manageable risk on that. And then when it comes to reward, you want to make sure that for taking that risk of participating in the trade, that if it works, you get paid well. You don't want to, just get paid a little bit if a trade works. And that's actually an issue that I see with a lot of traders is that they might have, pretty good risk control. But the problem is if they're doing, setups that don't have a ton of reward with them, then a lot of times they can just get chopped up because the risk can be the same amount on something that has a little bit of reward or something that has a huge amount of reward. And so the best trades are things that have low risk or very controllable, manageable risk, and things that have high reward. So if you're right, pays out really well. And then the third thing that you need to do to frame your trades is focus on the probability of that trade working. So that could either be interpreted as win rate or how often does this trade actually play out the way that you are envisioning. So usually when someone is struggling with trading, it's due to one of those things. Either their risk, their reward, or their probability is out of whack. And so every trade that you take, I would encourage you, especially into the new year, to draw out those 3 things. You can either do it reviewing the trades trades that you've taken, or as you're kind of thinking about taking trades in the future, think about, does this have low risk, low controllable risk? Does this have high reward if it works? And then how likely is it to actually work? And you can use that kind of triangle that, there's three things to frame any trade on any market over any time frame. And you can use that from investing to swing trading to day trading to options trading. And it's all the same kind of concept. So I highly encourage you to consider adding something like that and really just making the improvements that you need to for your trading in order to make sure that 2026 is a massive success for you. So that's really all I have for this week. Finally, we have a new Trader's Journey episode out about automating your edge. And so basically backtesting trading systems and automating all of that, how to really think about that. That's another huge edge that someone could really develop into the new year. So definitely check that out. And then also we are still running that Center Point deal. And so we will include that in the link below. And that is if you sign up for a new Center Point account and meet the minimum there, then you're getting a whole bunch of benefits. You get about 3 months of free commissions, and then you get 50% off commissions for your lifetime partnership there with Centerpoint. So, and then for the first 50 accounts, they also get a copy of the Legends Playbook, which is the new course that we released, and that features 8 different traders that are world class, each of them sharing their favorite setup in great detail so that someone can actually watch it, study it, learn from it, and start to apply it on their own. So hopefully that you're checking out all those deals, and I hope that everyone has a great week ahead. We will see you in Investors Underground. Take care.